So, good morning. Apologies. We are trying to work through some difficulties with AV this morning, which seem to cross the entire span of the United States. But welcome to this first show of the
So, good morning.
RCI. Apologies. We are trying to work through some difficulties with AV this morning, which seem to cross the entire span of the United States. Jeff, do you have to this first an open channel to LinkedIn Live?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. Let's see. Is it off? Is it off?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it appears to be off now.
Sorry.
Okay. Um, Back
Technology.
again. Let's see. Steve, can you hear us now? You can hear us, but we can't hear you. Okay. Uh, I'll let you work on that and we'll come back. So, anyway, this is the first show of Community Revitalization that is going to be participated in by myself and Jeff, one of the members of our team. Steve is trying to get online, and Bill appears to have been erased from the earth by the internet. So we'll see if he comes online here in a little bit. But this is a live stream show. I see we have some people in the audience, and they are sharing with us that they may have trouble hearing us. So if you're in the audience and you can hear me now, send me a message and say that you can hear me. Um, and Here I have a, a link from Don Cohen, my mentor and consultant on using LinkedIn Live. And Don, please confirm that you can hear me at this time because we're having some amazing AV issues this morning. Well, I will just move forward, which is all we can do, and hope that everything is going okay. Yeah, Don can hear us now, so we are live. We have two of our five team members on the show here this morning, and we're going to talk about the topic of community revitalization. We're going to talk about the new project we're putting together called RCI Community Funds. And our goal in this show is to talk to people, share knowledge that we have and that we're learning on helping communities rebuild themselves and primarily from the standpoint of making capital investments into communities in a strategic and controlled fashion that will create enough economic activity that the community can do a turnaround, can rebuild themselves, and move forward. With me currently on the show is Jeff. I'm waiting for the AV to go wrong here and take Jeff off the show. Um, but I'm going to share a little bit of my background, and then I'll ask Jeff to do the same. And if we can get a couple more of our team members on the show, then we'll consider this a small victory and move on. So I am a consultant, primarily working with small businesses and communities in kind of the role of a private economic developer. And what I do is try to figure out where the funding is that's needed for a particular business or project and match those up in a way where everybody can win from the situation. And earlier this year, I met a couple of the other team members of now what we're calling RCI Community Funds. And we all got together and realized that we had a shared interest in helping distressed, economically distressed, and underserved communities get back on their feet and help the residents of those communities, both individuals and businesses, have a better quality of life, a better quality of economy, and see what we can do to move forward. Almost, I think back to the stories of The Hobbit, where Gandalf the wizard shows up and then he's recruiting the hobbits to join him, and then they recruit the dwarves, and next thing you know, they have a team going out into the field. That's kind of the way this whole thing came together, where we realized that we each had an area of expertise and background that gave us different perspectives and different contacts and different things, but we all kind of shared in the same vision that if we could put together funding in the right way and deploy it in the right way in collaboration with local partners, good things could happen. So I joined the team, and I'm going to let Jeff now share his background on how we came together from his standpoint, and then we're going to dive more into what we think we can do, and invite the audience to ask us more questions or contribute more to the conversation. So Jeff, take it away.
Karl, thank you very much. I like the analogy to Lord of the Rings, and I don't know if we're finance hobbits or what the situation is, but I like that. So my background is primarily in finance. I spent a large part of my career working for large financial institutions, working with corporate clients, working with individual clients on the wealth management side. I have a background and had licenses related to investments in securities. And throughout that whole process of dealing with companies and people, I saw the impact that good financial decisions can have on communities. And so I, very much similar to Karl, met this group of people, and we've come together, I think, with fantastic, diverse but complementary backgrounds. And we're working to put this vision in place. Being the finance guy, and Karl will understand this because he's got some of the same tendencies. We're looking for projects that are not just great stories, but projects that really help build on themselves. And what I mean by that is that we come into a community, we assist with a project, and then that project is really the standard and the motivation for additional projects and buildings that can happen in that community. So it's something that I'm looking forward to doing. I think we've got a really great start despite the technical issues this morning, and I'm looking forward to working on this.
Let's see if we can get another member of our team online here. Steve, can you hear us? I can't hear you though. So I'm just going to let you sit there and smile, and I'm going to talk about you. So if I say something wrong, you raise a finger or point the other direction. But Steve is one of the key members of our team. He has his entire career been involved in community organization and coordination, has worked with a number of underserved and economically distressed communities, particularly on the East Coast. And he has a knowledge of how to work with and become part of the community. I mean, one of the problems that we all see who have ever worked with multiple communities is that you're viewed as an outsider. And it's so hard to get anything done when you're viewed with suspicion, when everybody's challenging your agenda and asking you, why are you here? Because it's hard for them to believe that, well, actually, you want to help, and truly says, I'm here to help. And Steve has been doing this throughout his entire career. He is excellent at bringing together different people with different thoughts, different points of view, and getting them to work together to rebuild a community. So I'm saying good things. Steve's happy now. And Obviously, as we go forward, we're going to work on better AV. But I'm talking from the road this morning because I'm at a 2-day conference on green building retrofits, which is part of what we're going to be doing going forward. And then Bill Huston is a member of the team. I'm going to speak about Bill for a moment. Bill is an expert in investment crowdfunding. He has his own company, CrowdMax, which offers a software platform to help businesses get organized and take advantage of raising money from the crowd through Regulation CF funding. And he and I met earlier this year, like everybody else, when we were at a conference as speakers on the topic of crowdfunding. And we realized that we had such shared interest and shared approach to working with crowdfunding, with the intent that we don't see that crowdfunding is designed or intended to allow wealthy people one more way of making investment. Crowdfunding was created with the purpose of allowing everyone to invest. So, removing the distinction between accredited and non-accredited investors, wealthy and non-wealthy people, because this is important in building a community. The people in the community, they need to be engaged. They need to have an opportunity to invest in their local businesses. And this is important from an economic development standpoint, because if they can invest locally, that profits from those businesses, from those investments, stay within the community instead of being exported outside of the community. And so this is going to be one of the many, many elements that we're putting together into our concept for a community investment fund. And we're going to be raising money from the community, but we know that we're going to have to supplement it and fill some of the gaps with money from outside the community in order to get it going. We're here, Steve. I can hear you.
Okay. All right,
Steve, I can hear you now.
Yep, Steve, you're on.
That's what the screen says. Everyone can see and hear me. So I don't know how that happened, but glad to be part of the conversation.
Well, see, that's one of the things about this group I'm certain of, is we have the persistence and tenaciousness to work through all the common challenges that we're going to face along the way. So, Steve, it's good to have you with us in voice as well as picture. And the fifth member of our team is Aaron Shalom. He is at a doctor's office this morning and unable to join us for this inaugural call. He is the youngest member of our group. I'll just say, not that we're all old, even though we are, is that Aaron brings some youth and a little bit of the younger perspective to what we're doing. And he is helping us put together all the infrastructure, the communications channels, and everything else to work. So we have a team of 5 guys, and we all share in the vision. And here is Bill. Bill, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. As this, I used the metaphor earlier, Bill, that this is like the opening to The Hobbit, where Gandalf shows up and talks to Frodo, and next thing you know, they're adding more and more people to the team as they move forward. That's the way the program has come together this morning. So we just got Steve on board with audio a few minutes ago. Bill is now with us. I've already told the world a few of your accolades, Bill, but if you would like to add a little bit more background to why you thought it was good to join with the rest of us in this new adventure, and a little bit more about your background, that would be good.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Sorry to be late, and appreciate everyone, for showing up for this. So my name is Bill Huston, and I'm a investment crowdfunding strategy consultant. And one of the reasons that it was really important for me to actually join in forces with these guys to really try to make these improvements in these disinvested communities, is because, those are the communities that I live in. That's where I come from. I've experienced this, personally, as an entrepreneur and a business owner. The lack of access to capital. I saw how the lack of access to capital stopped one of our businesses that was growing, and a business that was very similar to our business a few years later in 2018 was actually able to move forward because they were able to raise capital directly from their community. Right? So that was like a real life experience for me. And I think that it is very important for people to understand on, on a really deep level that the dollars we're talking about are already in the community. Those dollars are being spent. They're just being spent outside the community. And what we're proposing here is going to keep those dollars inside the community, keep the dollars circulating, building wealth, creating jobs, and creating what I like to talk about as community wealth and not just individual wealth. So I am happy to be a part of this team and really excited to move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And again, more perspective here in that we have different people coming at this from different backgrounds. But it's one of the things I've kind of learned over my many decades of working with businesses and so forth is if you have different people all independently come to the same conclusion, there may be a core truth or a core piece of wisdom that we're all involved with. And I think that's where we're at today is we know and have been involved and worked with community projects. We've worked with nonprofits. We've worked with economic development agencies, and they're all doing the best job they can. And yet it seems as though the problem is growing. And so we come at this looking, saying, well, what are we going to do? What can we do that they haven't already done? Where can we team with people who are already in the field, already in the communities to make something happen? And so we started working a number of months ago to come up with our concept for what we want to do, which is to create a series of community investment funds. And the idea is we pick a community, and for that community, we're going to set up a dedicated fund, a pool of money that will be invested into that community in order to try to give it the needed injection of energy and so forth that will cause that community to start working again and start moving in the right direction. So a little bit of background on that, and this is part of where we all kind of came together, is that there's been a lot of work was done by the National Coalition for Community Capital, NC3, and they advanced a model for funding called a Diversified Community Investment Fund, and they've published articles on their website. And we all know Chris Miller and work with this organization at some level. And we liked everything they were doing, and we're going, this could be the starting point or foundation for us to do something that would provide this particular type of assistance and support to a community. So we started figuring out what this would look like, and it kind of falls into two parts. One has to do with the raising of funds, that is to bring the money together into a fund. The other has to do with deploying the money into the community in a way that will get something done that's more than what we've seen in the past. And so from that standpoint, what we're now looking to do is pick a community, work with both local landowners, local businesses, and local support organizations, and try to bring enough money to that community to get something going. And so first things first, we're going to work on what we would call a community revitalization plan that takes all this into account and figures out how to get that money to work the hardest, the most interactive of the investments. And So the fund, based upon the NC3 model, 60% of the money will go into real estate ownership, and it has to be a direct ownership, not held through an intermediary. And 40% of the money out of the fund then can be invested into local businesses. So this allows us to work within the securities rules with the least amount of regulatory burden, as we call it, to get things going. And at that point, then we need to raise money into the fund. And we're looking at raising money locally. We're looking at raising money from people who are impact investors. And we're also looking to raise money from political activists, which we're going to try to kind of relabel financial activists. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Bill. And Bill, if you would talk a little bit about regulation crowdfunding and how you see us raising money from the crowd. We can talk about that a little bit and then bounce back to our community revitalization plan and how we collaborate with the local community.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carl. Um, so the first thing I want to say is that that I am a proud board member at NC3, the National Coalition for Community Capital. The Diversified Community Investment Fund has actually combined two things that are really powerful. One of them is investment crowdfunding and also community investment funds into one entity. And I think that is going to be a very powerful game changer. Using regulation crowdfunding and real estate crowdfunding, we would not have been able to create a fund. We would only have been able to invest in one particular project. Using the DCIF model, that allows us to create a fund. That fund allows us, as Carl said, to invest to deploy 60% of those dollars raised into the fund into real estate, 40% into business. And of course, if we so desired, we could deploy all of that into real estate, however that works out. With investment crowdfunding, one of the reasons that I like that model is it's very quick and it's very efficient. And when I say quick, that's all relative, right? Uh, but you can begin to reach out to a crowd through a testing the waters campaign, and a testing the waters campaign allows you to create a campaign which is going to be compliant, and that campaign can start reaching out to people in as little as about 2 weeks, depending on where you are as an organization and how developed you have your materials. The real beauty of this and the real beauty of testing the waters is that, you can reach out and you can actually talk to people. People can make commitments to actually invest, but you can still make changes at this point. So you can make changes, you can tweak your language, you can tweak how the campaign looks, how it appears, your video, your pitch deck. So that's really important. And those first people in are what I like to call the inner circle. These are people who you're going to know, you're going to have a relationship with, and hopefully they're going to be willing to give you some honest feedback. I think that's a very important. And when you take all the aspects of investment crowdfunding and the speed at which you can start reaching out to investors in a FINRA and SEC compliant way, and then you mix that with the community investment fund, you are really onto something. And I think that's where we are. The NC3 has done a lot of really hard and deep work into community investment funds. And one of the attorneys there, Brian Beckton, he actually created this diversified community investment fund. And I think we're going to be one of the first organizations to actually deploy this. And I'm really looking forward to it. And the reason I'm looking forward to working with this team is because they bring when put together as a team, there are so many complementary pieces that make this much more efficient. So I'm really excited. Hope that was the introduction you were looking for, Carl, and let's answer some questions.
Yeah. We've got some comments in the audience. We have a number of people who have come in and said hello this morning, and thank you for being in the audience. we have with us Kathy, who a number of us know and work with, who asked the question about whether or not we could work with a startup community. So right now, I'm gonna take a little moment to define community based on how we're approaching this. We are looking at a more common definition of a community, which is a neighborhood which has enough common interaction interests that people may view themselves as members of that community. Usually this is a geographical area. If we work with government definitions, we can look at a census tract. We could look at opportunity zones. There's other ways of defining what is a community, but in this case, it's been primarily geographically bounded because this is a way we know who's in the community, we know what their income levels are, we know who's living there, and we have a pretty good idea of what we can do with real estate and local business investment than to cause this economic action, this organization to move things forward. So a startup community would be more of one that would, if it's either a new city, yes, we could do something there. If it's an online community, that would be kind of a horse of a different color, and I will just say we haven't talked about it. I'm not ruling it out because so many new communities are online, all digital, not bounded by geographic borders. But that's something that we'll give some thought to and be an interesting question for us to entertain going forward. So thank you, Kathy, for that question. Um, so part of the challenge we see is raising the money. We're looking at crowdfunding. We think we're going to do some interesting things in deployment, as Bill was talking about. But we're going to be talking to a couple groups of investors, which would be considered external to the community, to bring in those additional dollars that we need. And one of those are impact investors. And I'm going to let Jeff talk a little bit more about what is an impact investor and why they might be of enough interest to get behind one of the funds that we intend to build and deploy.
Yeah, thanks, Karl. Impact investing differs from traditional investing in that traditional investors were focused primarily on the return of their investment. And it follows, I think, kind of the Milton Friedman protocol, from the early 70s that profit is the most important item and everything else sort of be damned. And what we have had is, I think, a sophisticated evolution of how people view not only their impact in terms of how they invest, but also the impact of the communities and the world that they live in. So you have traditional investing at one end of the spectrum, and at the other end of the spectrum, you have philanthropic investing. And philanthropy is not looking for really a return at all. They're looking for putting their money into projects solely for the benefit of that project and not looking for a return. Impact investing falls into the middle. Impact investors are looking to do good and do well. And as part of that, they're looking to possibly see a return that is less than what traditional investors are looking for. The return is more than what philanthropic investors are looking for. At the same time, they really intersect on the philanthropic side in that they are looking to put their money into projects that do benefit communities, that do benefit individuals, and will continue to do that into the future. So there is a little bit of a different protocol in terms of how they look at how they're investing. And I think an important point to talk about here is capital stack. And I don't mean to be too fancy here, but a capital stack is something where you have a lot of different players with different motivations that are coming in, and in totality, that capital that is brought in by that capital, that stack, that group of investors, whomever or however they might be characterized, is what funds that project. So impacted investors fall into that capital stack. What we're doing falls into that capital stack. Certainly, the crowdfunding part of this falls into that capital stack, and ultimately will provide the capital that's available for the project.
Yeah, so right now we're looking at a design for a community fund that would raise up to $5 million through a regulation CF crowdfunding campaign. With that as a base or foundation amount of money, we expect that we will be able to leverage or borrow money like you would with a down payment on a new house or on a building. And that if we could raise up to the $5 million limit within the Reg CF campaign, we in turn may be able to borrow up to $20 million more in a common equity to debt ratio from banks or mortgage companies and others that can be used in acquisition of buildings, restoration, or new building on the real estate side. And this gives us the ability to make the initial investment that much larger, and the capital stack becomes that much greater with its ability to do stuff. So one of the other groups that we're going to go and seek external funding from are from activists. And Steve, I'm going to let you talk about activists and tell us who they are and how they may want to get involved and support what we're doing.
All right, great. Well, congratulations on putting this together. We've come together as a group and as natural collaborators. I'm sure over the next and coming year or so, more and more people will be coming and joining the collaboration to do better. So just as a little bit of context, my background is I got into real estate accidentally. I bought a property or two as a grad student, realized you need money to or even a job to buy real estate. So long story short, I took a leave of absence because I wanted to do some development in the inner city. I was living in DC at the time. And the whole idea was I realized I could make a lot of money rebuilding communities and then take that money and reinvest it into the social justice agenda that I really was passionate about. So I spent literally decades working deep within underserved communities and of course, with starting off with no capital. But I realized that there's a couple of very obvious things. One is rebuilding underserved communities is a financially very profitable opportunity. How can you tell? Well, this thing called gentrification happens because community investors come in and they buy up the block and they change communities. The other part is the lack of coordinated capital to offset well-funded market forces, which reinforces a lot of displacement and all sorts of problems within the community. So when I first heard about crowdfunding 12 years or so ago, I thought, wow, finally there's a kind of a democratic, a small ball kind of process to put together a capital that can be invested right in the communities we were living in. So, of course, any great ideas take a little time to get attention and traction. And that's the case with crowdfunding. So fast forward to before the pandemic, when everything kind of shut down and Zooms and webinars was a part of life, I really started getting into the crowdfunding world, getting plugged in. This is where I met Bill and others. And I realized crowdfunding is still a great tool, but why is it so small and relatively almost minuscule compared to the need and demand and the opportunities in the communities? So I kind of looked at that and I got to know a lot of the top dogs, experts in the crowdfunding world, Bill, of course, being one of the first. And I kept asking, why isn't everyone rushing? Because the investment required is $100, $1,000. It's not that tough. So my problem was, why isn't this just taking off like crazy? Because it's so low risk and you could do a lot of good for it. And I quickly realized and confirmed by a lot of the experts that I was getting to know is the mechanisms are in place. They need to be improved. They need to be a little more cost effective. I won't get too wonky into that, but the bottom line was, and the obvious thing for me was, where is the investor pool? Is it large enough to go out there and build up these $100, $1,000 things? So to me, the investor pool was tiny, and I'm thinking, I'm also a political organizer, both deep in the inner city communities as well as a national a political organizer. Living in D.C. area, it's very convenient for me to get into politics. But my point here is, I've worked with organizers where we've done petition drives that go out to literally millions of activists who just sign a petition, activists who write a check for their favorite candidate cause or whatever without any expectation of return. So I'm thinking, if we can tap into these millions of people to donate money, sometimes knowing that they're losing causes, and people who are naturally inclined and want to put their money where their principles are, like improving and creating more equity in communities. I thought, why isn't this the crowdfunding world tapping into this network? Well, part of the reason why is in America, we like to sector things and silo things, and there's not a lot of bridges between these two. So all this to say is we are putting together what we're calling the activist investor movement, where along with our national organizer allies and friends, both inside and outside the Beltway, we're looking to tap into literally a target audience that's just naturally inclined to invest in communities that they want to help support. So that's the mechanism we're beginning to build. We've got some great expertise on our team. Bill, this is right up his alley. Bill's plugged in, sits on great boards. So part of our value and advantages we have at RCI Community Funds is, one, we're relying on several sources of capital. So here's Jeff. He's got tons of years of high net worth banking experience. We've got Karl, who's been doing this for decades, putting together capital for small startups and even larger ventures. So we've got this great collection and we're tapping into DAFs, foundations, others who are intrigued by what we're doing, because we're not only aggregating capital, but we're also very able to go into communities and really identifying the worthy projects. Because remember, a lot of these sources that want to invest in communities, they have no idea how and where to invest in communities. Why? Because they almost never are in these communities. So the RCI Community Funds is a mechanism where we can not only aggregate community capital, but make sure it gets placed into not only the right opportunities, but into opportunities that could be kind of reverberating. So we don't want to just do affordable housing in a bombed out block where there's absolutely no commercial or anything else around it. We want to put together an integrated or a district revitalization way of doing this. So that takes a lot of strategy, that takes a real knowledge of the community. It takes an ability to find the real leaders in the community, so on, et cetera, all which mitigates our risk in our investments. Now, remember, as community-minded and as social-minded as we are, the bottom line here is no financial returns, no social returns. So again, getting back to the crowdfunding world and opportunity, if we could tap into the millions of people who write checks to politicians or get involved or who park their money in mutual funds that are absolutely against their principles, well, we need to educate them. So Bill's got a great education background. So let's let these people know that move $1,000. It is not earth-shattering. It's real easy. Move $1,000 to one of the many businesses that we hope to be investing in ourselves or supporting, or any of our allies. So we'll help you not only direct that investment, but we'll make sure that your principles go to where your heart is versus, investing in the fossil fuel world, which is where a lot of mutual funds go, right? So again, the idea here is the activist investor movement is one we're going to be kicking off, building out, and hopefully, if all goes well, we tap into an army of investors that don't even know this exists. And once they find out, I think we'll have a great response, and then we could really do some substantial stuff under the umbrella of the RCI Community Funds.
Yeah, so again, thanks to our audience today for listening in. I appreciate the comments. This is from Kathy. Yes, awareness is key. The more knowledge they have, the more power the intention in developing the community. I think that's a great recognition of the fact that you can't just walk into a community and give them a mandate. You can't do a cram down. You can't force the community to do something different. You have to work in and with the community. And this is one of the things I think that we as a group are bringing to the table is this long experience of working with a wide variety of communities, both rural and urban, and understanding how economics work, the need to be sustainable from an economic standpoint, and then getting everybody engaged, and in some cases, causing unity or recognition that you are members of a community and that you can work together to create good for everyone within that community. So I'm going to step back a moment and I'm going to kind of give a high overview of how we're moving forward under the RCI Community Funds brand. And what we're doing right now is we are putting together the more and more detailed, what we call a standard template for a community revitalization plan. As Steve described, this is figuring out where to place the money to get the most bang for the buck and also create a return on the investment, which will cause people from outside the community to put their money to work within a community as we go forward. With that plan, as we evolve and create that, then we're talking to several communities right now about where we would like to build our first fund and get it started. And these discussions include landowners, local business people. It includes local support organizations that are already working with that community. So we know that when we pick a community, it has a high chance of everything being successful and actually contributing value to that community. Once we select a community, then we will put together a regulation crowdfunding campaign to create a fund that's dedicated to that specific community. And we will go through a regular crowdfunding type of campaign where we're going to reach out to impact investors, the local community, to activists, and ask them to come together, put their money in a pool, which will be a community investment fund. And then under the model of NC3, that fund will act as a subsidiary under our management, which will deploy the money into the community with 60% of the money going into real estate directly and 40% into local businesses. And then we're going to work with those businesses to help make the real estate investment successful while the real estate will become a wealth building tool for both people who are residents in the residential housing, the tenants, as well as the businesses who are tenants in the commercial space. And so these items working together create the kind of synergy, the kind of activity that we're looking for to move things forward. And while we're doing this, we recognize that this is just one community. It's as much impact as we hope to have, as much good work we'd like to accomplish in this community. It's not going to begin to help all the other communities unless we do something more. So while we're working on developing our model and putting our first fund together, we're working on what we're calling our academy. And the academy is taking all the knowledge we have currently and what we're putting together in our models for the plans and for the funds. And we're going to start sharing this through a series of educational programs. And our goal is to reach a point where we have a turnkey package. Any community leader anywhere in the United States can come to us and we can work with them to implement this package in their community, where they're doing most of the heavy lifting because there's only so many of us on the team. But by doing this, this allows us, as we would call it, to replicate and scale the impact that we can have by sharing this information. And so part of this LinkedIn Live program today, the newsletter that we started yesterday on LinkedIn, is for sharing this information. This will be one of many different communication platforms that we're going to be using to get this information out. And we're also inviting everybody to come and work with us. Anyone who is a community leader, anyone who has a community that they would like to turn around, anyone who is already working with these communities. These are all people that we intend to work with and help and collaborate with and do what we can to contribute our part to what everybody else is already doing. So we're in motion. We are moving forward towards putting together our first community revitalization plan, and then follow that with a regulation crowdfunding campaign with the expectation that we will be able to start putting money into a community here within the next 6 months to 1 year. From that point, while we're doing that, we're going to be working with other communities looking to replicate what we're doing immediately and working within the academy to share the information. So hopefully we're doing everything we can to bring this new force, so to speak, this funding implementation into a community and put it to work. And with that, I'm going to cycle back through the group here and let everyone share some of their observations and comments about, where we've come from and where we're going. And so, Jeff, take it away.
Yeah, thanks again, Karl. Raising capital is not for the weak of heart, and it takes persistence. It's a dynamic process. There are people who are motivated for different reasons to do what they do, and understanding the motivations of the people involved, I think, is so critically important to success. And you touched on something earlier about what it is that we're doing. One of my favorite terms, and one that I know you all have heard many times as we've talked, is innovate, replicate, and scale. And the idea is to really perfect this methodology in such a way that is applicable to all the communities that we work in. And certainly there are going to be differences in all of them. There is a unique aspect to everything that you do. Every deal is different. But it's something that I think we all love, and it's a challenge that I'm certainly looking forward to. I know you all are as well.
Thank you. Bill, your thoughts at this point?
Yeah, thank you for that, Jeff. In crowdfunding, there's one fundamental rule. That's if you don't build an excited and engaged crowd, you're not going to get the funding that you're looking for. Period. Doesn't matter what kind of crowdfunding it is. And over the last couple of weeks, we've seen an example of how people became really excited about a political campaign. They got together, they had conversations, and the money started to flow. And what we have to do, in the economic financial sphere, is we have to create those groups where people are excited about what it is that we're doing and the opportunities to move forward, and then the money will flow. It's about building the crowd, getting people educated, excited, and aware of the power that they do have as a collaborative, and then kind of turning on the spigots to get the money flowing. And the one thing that I always like to drive home here is that when you talk about these communities, whether they be urban communities, rural communities, underserved, disinvested communities, the money's there, right? Already, the people are spending the money. They're just not spending it in their community. They're just not recycling the money. So getting that knowledge and understanding, into the communities, that's going to be number one. And I'm really excited to be working with a team. And someone said a little bit earlier that it's about having a coordinated plan. And that's what we've really been able to build here. I've done crowdfunding campaigns, in different communities. We've had some that have been really successful, but there was no coordinated plan. It was just a one-off, and then the next one-off. And that's what this team brings in the RCI Community Fund. They bring a coordinated system. So I'm excited about this. Tell everybody that you know. about what it is that we're doing so we can start building that excited, engaged crowd. Thank you.
Well, Bill, I'll segue off of your point there, which is a perfect setup in that, we have to build an infrastructure that can counter, the status quo that reinforces what we all don't like in the economic development world. The problem is it's not there. Crowdfunding is a great example, but again, still in its infancy and not well known, so on, et cetera. So part of our agenda and what's very intentional for us is not just put money together and go in and find investment. It's really, we're building an ecosystem and infrastructure where when we go into one community, and by the way, there's thousands of communities that would qualify for the underserved kind of focus we want to have. Thousands. That's a huge opportunity. Plus, again, rebuilding underserved communities is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. But we don't have the mechanisms. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the education, the awareness, or the consumer awareness, or the community buy-in. One thing that's very important that I learned very quickly as basically a white boy working in the hood is you come in there and you say, hey, I'm a white boy working in the hood and I'm going to help you people. Forget it. You have to find local leaders, and the most effective long-term permanent impact you're going to have is that are those projects that are really done with real buy-in from the local community. I can tell you this firsthand because I've been doing this for 30 some odd years, and the communities that I saw where they were really engaged with the more, shall we say, open-minded progressive investors, the longer and stronger that community was. And that's what we want to do. So our task is conventionally, let's raise money. The next task is let's use that money in the most effective way that mitigates risks, because we want to give returns to our investors, but also permanently changes things versus one-offs and others where eventually money sources come in and blow out what we started years ago, but it wasn't done correctly. So that's what I'm excited about. And aside from the great experience that we all have, and with Aaron, who's the younger generation who we're going to be teaching all this to, and he can enlighten his generation. What I really like about this, and what I think distinguishes the RCI Community Funds, is again the expertise, the broad background here, our knowledge and connection and authenticity in the communities. But more importantly, again, we're not just here for return on investment, raise some money, let's put it out there. We're building something that we hope everyone and their mother will replicate, because this is not rocket science, but no one is doing it. And if you don't have the right capital and the right resources or the right education in the community, conventional money sources are going to always keep doing what they're doing, which is creating and sustaining and building unsustainable communities, ecosystems, and a whole bunch of other things. Jeff, by the way, is very focused on sustainability. So when we're talking about community rebuilding, it's just not about housing or art centers. It's about the jobs that are created that won't be shipped off to China. It's about jobs that are created so that our earth will survive and our lungs will survive and all that sort of thing. So again, we're multifaceted change agents and thought leaders that are putting this together that all happen to have a good business background. And now we're reaching out to build, a large network. I don't want to use army. It's a little too militaristic. A large collaboration, multifaceted, cross-sector collaboration to work together to create an infrastructure that is a true alternative to the status quo that's been going on for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be part of this group because one, even though there's only 5 of us in our starting team, we already have existing relationships with so many other groups, crowdfunding, community building, economic development, and so forth. And we're kind of using internally the term plug and play. We know programs that already exist that, if brought into a community, could be put into place and started immediately. This isn't we'll figure it out later. This is, they're already doing it well over here. We'll just bring them into this new community and immediately have impact. And there are groups out there, as Steve and Bill both have described, where they have a mission to do everything that we've been talking about today. but they don't have a particular program. They don't have the people that have our background or experience to basically implement and do their mission for them. And so we're looking to team with these groups. And again, we're not starting from scratch. We already know many of these organizations. We work with them for years, if not decades. And so we see our team growing exponentially as we form alliances, as we enter into agreements, and we work with all these other groups, and then ultimately reach out to the millions of activists, the millions of impact investors, and invite everybody to the party here to make this work. And so I'll give you a little heads up as we move forward. We're going to be doing this program every week going forward. We're going to bring in other people who are experts on rebuilding community. We're going to bring in other groups, representatives of groups who are already working and will be allies of ours going forward in what we're trying to do. We'll be bringing people in from communities who are community leaders where they can talk from their perspective of how we can help them rebuild their communities and move things forward. So every week going forward, 8 o'clock on Mountain Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll have a new guest coming on, and we'll be spending an hour in conversation with them, talking about how to rebuild communities, how we can revitalize communities, and we can make life better for the people who are in those communities by creating jobs, by creating better places to live, by creating more economic activity. Then these communities now have a foundation to build upon to move forward. So real quick, we'll go around the group. Last comments, Jeff?
Yeah, I just would echo what both Bill and Steve have said, Karl, that, happy to be involved in this. I see so many benefits, coming together. This synergy, I think, is a great description for it. And, I'm just happy to be a part of it to the extent that, my background, both in finance and sustainability is, adds to this process. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Karl. Yeah, we have a great team here. I think we have a great plan. And what we need people to show up for this LinkedIn Live. We need people to follow us on LinkedIn. We need a community. We need to build a community. This needs to be something that is community based and community driven. And we're going to provide an opportunity for people to come, to learn, to engage with us, to communicate with us, provide us with an opportunity to learn from them, and really make this something that becomes resilient and sustainable over time. Thank you.
So we're a collection of connectors. So we know a lot of people. We've been around and done this. And to build out what we need to build, we need to tap into more connectors so that this becomes exponential. Everyone who's hearing or paying attention to this call, you're a connector too. So we really encourage everyone to reach out, share your ideas, share your opportunities, see what we could do for you, so on, et cetera. And then eventually we become more and more of a defined ecosystem that doesn't have to find each other. It can easily find each other. So we are looking to really build a network that understands that we're not talking about radical, redevelopment of our economy, but by working together, we can do much more and get the returns that we want, whether it's social or financial, and with a greater common good outcome. It's not impossible, but not easy either.
It's not easy either. So with this last comment by Kathy, who has been following along in the audience today, well done. Yes, a collection of connectors. I love that. I think that is a statement of the fact that this cannot be done alone. We are ourselves putting things together, but we are also reaching out now to everybody around us who we know, trying to figure out how to grow this thing up and start having as much impact as quickly as possible. So thank you to the audience. Please come back next week. As Bill said, come back next week, watch us again. contact us directly if you want to talk about something going on in your community. Subscribe to our newsletter on LinkedIn, and we'll continue to move this whole concept forward. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending today, and we'll see you next week.